who we believe we have the ability to deport at the conclusion of their immigration process. And the Supreme Court has said that if removal, if deportation is not likely within 180 days of having a final order to remove them, the U.S. government must release that immigrant from detention. And it doesn't matter what type of criminal history, for example, that person has. And so there are cases where someone has been here illegally. While here illegally, they committed a very serious crime. It could be murder, it could be rape, but because their country of origin has refused to take them back, ICE releases them from custody, and there is nothing that can be done about that because of a Supreme Court decision. And so that's another quirk in the U.S. immigration system that causes people concern.
These people probably they have children and they are U.S. citizens. Does that affect their status with the years?
Yes, if they do have children while they are here, those children are U.S. citizens. Typically, those children really don't have any ability when they grow up, and we've got cases where the kids are now, young adults. The kids really don't have any ability to, again, get a benefit for the parents because the parents' order of removal, predates the birth of the children. So it's a very complicated situation.
Thank you. Oh, there's another question here.
Hi, just a quick question about the deportation procedure. And I wanted to know if there is a special procedure for deportation of families, especially children, or other vulnerable groups.
Yeah, probably the most difficult challenge that ICE faces is how to deal with families where one or more members of the family is subject to being deported. And what ICE will do is try to make the necessary arrangements to have the family leave the country as a group and allow them to leave on their own terms, however they feel it's best for them to leave the country. I didn't mention, but ICE flies anywhere from 6 to 10 large aircraft every day, 737 size, Boeing 737 size aircraft that seat about 160 to 70 people. 6 to 10 of them are in the air every day, moving people from the interior of the United States to the southern border, and then from the southern border into Mexico and Central America. And these are flights that ICE runs, and not always the most comfortable flights. As you can imagine, if you've got 130, in some cases, convicted criminals on a flight. And so when it comes to families, ICE tries to allow them to leave on their own rather than on an ICE flight. They also will help the families obtain passports for the children, visas for the children, do whatever they can to make it as easy as possible. They will give what they call deferred action for sometimes a couple of years or more to allow the children to graduate from their next level of school before they go home with the parents. And if the parents choose, or a parent chooses to leave on their own and not take the children, ICE does try and make sure that the children are cared for. This is one area where ICE and some of the advocates in the United States have agreed to disagree. While I was responsible for all this program, I could not find a case where, as a result of either detaining a parent or removing a parent, that children ended up in foster care, state care. The NGOs say that it happens all the time. I'm not sure what the right answer is. As I said, I could not find any cases of that. The NGOs say it happens. But I can tell you that ICE does make a very significant effort to do the best they can for people with families.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So perhaps I could ask one particular question referring to asylum seekers. You mentioned them as a particular group of persons that are tolerated to stay in the country until their status is determined. In particular, I'm interested to know if they are allowed to move freely in the country, do they get some kind of visa, or are they held in some kind of detention or within the community until their status is determined?
Great question. The typical case of an arriving alien, particularly someone who comes across the southwest border illegally and asks for asylum, they are typically detained initially, and they quickly go before someone from a government agency called Citizenship and Immigration Services, CIS. And that asylum officer makes the initial decision as to whether or not the person's claim is credible. Do they have a credible fear of going back to their country? And those decisions are made pretty liberally. I would say somewhere between 80 and 90% of the people who make a credible fear claim have that claim approved. And as soon as that claim is approved, they are eligible to be released from custody, and for the most part, they almost always are. They could have spent a week or 2 or 3 or 4 in custody, but once their credible fear has been upheld, they are released. And at that point, it is up to an immigration judge to ultimately determine whether or not they will be granted asylum. And that process can take months and some years to complete. And during that time, that they are at liberty in the country, they are not detained, they are allowed to work, and as long as they maintain contact with ICE in terms of where they're living and so on, they are free to move around the country. They could, initially have their case heard in New York, and they could go to California and have the case transferred there. So they are pretty free to move around. But while that case is pending, they are not, accruing any benefits towards being allowed to stay. It's not like the longer you stay, the more points you get towards your asylum claim. The asylum claim is being adjudicated independent of how long you're here.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Thank you very much, Gary.
Thank you. My pleasure to talk with you all.
We'll go for a break now. I think we all need some coffee and sweets, and we'll be back within 15 minutes.